Thanks for joining us for Political Talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover
Excited?
It's War, On Bad Authority, Anthropic AI, and the Trump Dump. We'll also have our segments on the media and more on this. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
Hiya, I'm Matt Nisanoff.
And tonight we start with
It's war. There we go.
war. That's right.
We can talk about many things, but of course we have to start off with Trump's folly and seeing how many people we can kill globally on regime change, which of course is the last thing in the world that he ever wanted to do during the campaign. But here we are in real world time, and he's off to the races. Venezuela was not enough, so he's moved up to Iran, and we'll see about Cuba being on the dance card next. The more bringing it home issue, I guess, would be the Austin shooting, where an Iranian sympathizer, perhaps motivated by the war, was opened fire in a crowded bar in Austin's busy nightlife district, and then he himself was shot fatally by police. They're still investigating whether or not to classify it as an act of terrorism. Anyone else have anything to say about Austin?
Well, I don't know if we're just getting too inured, too used to these shootings. It barely cracked my consciousness, my perception, my pop culture awareness that this had happened at all. And usually, one or both sides of our two-party system will pick it up and run with it. Lately, it's been very in fashion to just make up lies and say, this person was something they weren't, whether they're domestic terrorists and they weren't, whether they're trans and they weren't, whether they're Republican or Democrat when they weren't. Usually there's at least that shameless disinformation. I didn't even get that. And the guy, I guess he was wearing a representation of the Iranian flag. And so I would think somebody would try to make political hay out of this with all the vultures around. And I just didn't see that much of it. And that strikes me as odd. I don't know what to make of that. It's almost become sport, from the catchphrase, thoughts and prayers, where we self-referentially mock our own inability to react to this in any effective way. We just sort of acknowledge it and move on. And the sadness becomes a ritual, becomes a habit, becomes nothing at all. And anyway, so I'm surprised not to see more of this in the news. And I mean, I would think Republicans would want to make this, they're absolutely dying on the vine for something they can do to distract from the war that's not going well, distract from the Epstein files, but also they're looking for a reason to mess with the elections. And these sort of homegrown, they could have spun this into homegrown terrorism. I mean, they've lied bigger on smaller things. So I don't know. Maybe they're just run out of people and lies. I don't know.
No, I don't.
Because maybe I'm misperceiving this.
Well, I wonder if the idea that they are trying to distract from a failed war is their perception or not. I mean, to them, this is a glorious war, which we will win in 2 weeks, and
Sure.
God is on our side, so we will march, in as liberators. And so I don't think it's hit them yet that this is just another folly.
I agree. On the other hand, that's more reason for them to bang the drum and make political hay out of what is apparently or could be construed as an Iranian sympathizer going on a shooting spree. I mean, if they're looking for reasons to well, you can't have elections when you're at war. He said tellingly not that long ago. This would be the type of thing that they would make hay out of, and at least note it, get it in the public bloodstream and consciousness. and I had to go searching to look up a story in advance of the show. I had to really search and seek this out. There wasn't usually the usual wall to wall headlines, and yeah, it's been a few days, but holy cats! I mean, usually this country knows how to market this type of thing, and I just don't see that happening. It's kind of a good thing, but it is remarkable to me.
Yeah, I feel like we've been on a sort of long, but not really all that long in the grand scheme of things, like process and sort of desensitizing ourselves to these mass shootings. Um, like when c- I don't know if I have a different view of Columbine than the average person because it happened like 40 miles from where I was, grew up. Um, but you know, how long was that mourned? And then now, things have become so common that we can only mourn a day or something before the next one rolls up. And now, to Tom's point, like all the time, I didn't know this until one of you brought it up. Um, and yeah, I think it would be easy to spin a narrative. Um, so, um, or they've spun narratives on less, but it's also sort of a symptom of, I think, a long desensitization, right? It is the nature of a human that you can't live your whole life in tragedy. So as things happen over and over and over again, you kind of
You have to assimilate. You can't be tragic. You can't be traumatized all the time. I mean,
right.
you can. People are traumatized, but at some point, you still have to pay your rent. You still have to go to work. You still have to feed the dog, whatever it is. You can do it sad. You can do it shell shocked. And I think people's brains, they burn out. We're not really meant to process traumatic things like that. We can't. I mean, if we sat and reflected, we'd be pretty messed up. We'd be late for work, and that's not
I,
good for the bottom line. So, and I think our frontal, I think our brains are just wired that way. We can't withstand being that traumatized all the time. As bad as it sounds, yeah, you pick up and you carry on, and what else can you do?
I think that this was a shooting incident where there were 3 people killed, which normally might get some attention. But with missiles flying all over the Middle East and the possibility of an extended, larger war, I think that it just sort of fell through the cracks, if you will. It is simply not as big a story as buildings in a dozen different Arab nations being attacked by Iran. So you've got, and of course they also attacked Israel, and there's back and forth there, but that's practically expected. Uh, this
Right,
this sort of thing happens every 6 months. They attack each
illustrating the
other,
point
and
again.
they're there. But they extended it to the UAE and into Saudi Arabia and into anything within reach. They were shooting at, and they may even still be firing missiles at this point. This thing about it being a couple of weeks now. So I not that it is lacking in tragedy, but that the people who would normally want to rush to either hold it up as some sort of grand example of whatever are have too many other shiny red objects to run to, and they're taken up by the sounds of the missiles and not necessarily the sounds of the handguns. Um, but also, there's some issues with, speaking of the Middle East, um, there's been a number of Americans stranded there, and what was it? Marco Rubio told them to play a recorded message.
Well,
Please
he,
do
he
not
gave out a
rely
phone
on.
number. He gave out a
Say
phone
again.
number that people could. He gave Rubio, as I understand it, gave out a phone number that people could call for help, and it says, "Don't call us. We'll call you. You can't. Don't rely on the U.S." Maybe he played a recording and I didn't hear it right.
Well, apparently the message said, "Do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time." So I don't know. That might be discouraging to someone trying to get out of a
Might
hot,
be.
war zone.
They had weeks and months to plan for this, and they just didn't do nothing about it.
Well, and I mean, like, when we were here, when we were recording last week, we were talking about the peace talks that were supposed to happen the next day. And then we recorded on Wednesday, and then the peace talks were supposed to happen on Thursday, and by Friday there was bombs falling. And so, like, it's to your point, like, did they have weeks to plan? Because that kind of means that they were lying about the whole idea of peace talks, which is obviously I wouldn't put past them. But it seems like an elaborate ruse to go to when they have not done really much of anything to, apart from like just barely to kind of justify the bombing. There's not it's not like Iraq and 20 years ago. It's just like, oh, we just did this, we have to do this, like, whatever. There was no manufacturing of consent and stuff like that. It's just like, we're just going to do it.
Yeah, you got to remember who the guy is who's doing it. He has an agenda. He has his own agenda. It's going to be about how he can get money out of the situation.
Historically, not big on consent.
Not big on consent.
That's true, but we'll see. So far, it's hard to hold optimism for anything, but there was definitely some MAGA core who are, anti-war, and they want to be isolationist, and they're going to be upset about this. And some of them have, expressed that. And, like, if you isolated the anti-pedophile and you've isolated the isolationist, then basically which I guess is the nature of fascism, but you're kind of attacking your own people. So, eventually your coalition is just going to get smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Plus, you're giving him way too much credit if you think that he actually cares about MAGA. The turning back on them is just what he does. He is always going to wind up betraying everybody, not just his enemy. He's going to disagree and then do what he can to betray them, but he's going to do it to his friend, and he's going to do it to the person who said they had his back, and then he's going to do it to the guy who gives money to the women that he attacks.
As soon as he doesn't need you.
Do it to the.
Yeah, I don't expect Trump to have any sort of loyalty, but I will say that many times what causes fascist or authoritarian dictatorships to fall is when they start, alienating their cores. And so the faster he can alienate his core, it sucks if the only way out is through, but fast is maybe better.
Excellent point.
I think about that, and I remember when Trump was really coming into his own in 2015 and mounting this utter conquering of this country we have. And I read up on him, and I was trying to, because I didn't know any celebrity on TV. You don't know what they're really like. There's always people who pump them up because they need something from them, and there's always people who tear them down because no human alive has lived long enough not to make an enemy. And so you hear about anybody, you're going to hear two things. He's great, they're terrible. And so I would look at Trump and I would read and I would try to glean out the factual stuff. And all it comes down to is that he screws everybody over. He finds a way to get someone on his side, profit from that, and then expunge them. As soon as he doesn't need you, it's out the fucking airlock with you. And a lot of times he'll create cross purposes and make his own trouble. He could probably have long, productive relationships if he didn't tank them. And so I would look at that, and then I would also compare that he is obviously has a soft spot for Putin, and everybody thought that was the P tape, and Putin has the goods on him. That's why Trump is so subservient, because the guy was absolutely pathetic. He would droop when Putin walks, onto the same stage. He was very stoop-shouldered, just unassuming, when usually he's running around, slapping his dick against things just to make an ass of himself. But he's super reverential around Putin. And I thought, well, there's one person he'll never screw over. You'll get a polonium nightcap. And sure enough, Putin is sour on Trump. Trump isn't coming through the way he was supposed to. Ukraine is still Ukraine. And Jeffrey Epstein. You'll never find a tighter friendship in this world than between two pedophiles. They got a lot of secrets to keep between themselves. And Trump even sold out Epstein. He says it was because, oh, yeah, he took my favorite dishwasher or whatever. Yeah, we know what that means. But, if anybody had the goods on Trump, if anybody you thought they'd be thick as thieves to the end, it would be him and Epstein, because all the bodies, where they're buried and who knows and things like that. And Trump sold him out. He called, I want to say he snitched on him to the FBI for, I don't know. Anyway, it's fuzzy, but he eventually screws everybody. There's no one. He's like a shark made of parasites. He will, again, I didn't think he would cross Putin, but he's even disappointed Putin. So
Well,
it's just what he does, like you said.
Yeah, I have a feeling he might come up later in the show as well. So let's put a hold on Trump for now, and we'll move into our first segment. Yeah, and we'll move into our first segment, which of course is on the media.
On the media. And we're going to run this.
I have another photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying from inside this room. Can you please advise me as to whether or not that's permissible and consistent with the rules, particularly given that we have asked for a public hearing? If there are photos that are being released of the secretary as she is testifying, can you please explain how that can occur?
I'm done with this. If you guys are doing that, I am done. You can hold me in contempt from now until the cows come home. This is just typical behavior.
We will go off the record.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So I would like to understand how that's permissible.
Before the hearing was,
It doesn't matter. We all are abiding by the same rules.
I will take that down.
Yeah,
So
well,
I would like to take a break at this moment.
yeah,
and I'd like to have
I'm
a
done
conversation.
for now.
Whew, man, salty and saucy. And yeah, that was Hillary Clinton reacting from within their secret meeting, their closed door public, closed to the public meeting, where she's given testimony, and they insisted on doing it behind closed doors. Lauren Boebert got it into her empty little head to leak some photos to some, I don't know, right winger. So I don't know who she leaked them to, but they ended up on a right wing blog somewhere. And so when Boebert says, I'm going to get those taken down, she has no way to get those taken down. It's on the internet, baby. The internet's forever. So anyway, wanted to give a little context to that. That was, I don't know who released that. It looks like Hillary's people from my vantage point.
It's just a shame they didn't try to force. It's just a shame the Clinton folks didn't try to force in some press people. I mean, they had said they wanted to do it publicly. They were told no. And then these goofballs go and put their video on through their channels to get it out there. She was certainly within her rights to say, "I'm done. Have a nice day." But I wonder what would have happened if she had said, "You know what? You want to see things. You want to have it out there. That's great. Let me bring in a dozen people who are reporters now, and if you want to continue, we can continue then."
I can't imagine they would have held still for it, but would have been worth a try.
Well, what are they going to do? Stop it? Okay, so you stop the meeting. That's your choice. Have a nice day. It would be I'd continue. I'd continue publicly, which is the way I wanted to do it in the first place. But you guys said no, and then you guys did this. So, pushback. But I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Tom. You have some more. Some more to say.
I was going to add a little more context. If you've seen some of the other video from this that was also released, they're asking her nonsense questions. They're wasting her time. She says she doesn't, and it seems to be borne out. No one even is accusing her of lying, that she has never met Epstein to her knowledge, that she had no dealings with him, which kind of refreshing. But they would put these stupid questions. Well, did you compare? They would put these questions to her about Pizzagate, and did you compare Pizzagate to what you know about the Epstein files and some stupid stuff like that? It was a complete waste of time. It was just jerking her around. It was just another chance to kick a Clinton around because she's the woman they love to hate. And long ago has it lost any tie to reality or consequence or reason. Hannah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have any more to add than is here, but I feel like isn't their whole point in having these meetings that they're for the public good? You know, like you can't if you're going to have them behind closed doors. Okay, I know that that's not the point, but the narrative they're trying to spin, you know, is that we're supposed to have this information. But I mean, like um, it ends up becoming bordering on comical if it wasn't so depressing that there's this like call for transparency and then this immediate shutdown, you know, of the Epstein files or these kinds of things or whatever, you know, like if you want to, you know, put Clinton or whomever out there and you know, ask the questions everybody's dying to ask, then do that or don't do it, you know. I personally feel like it feels like such a weird, and you know, the media is uh so satellite now to everybody and it's all these islands that I don't really know, but I feel like I'm not sure what this is to be gained. Like what is Hillary Clinton? Does she even have a lot of power in the Democratic Party right now? Um I mean, maybe amongst like long-term, you know, people, whatever, but you know, it's not like you know, like I don't hear people like raring for her and being like, "Oh man, like like Hillary Clinton," like,
Yeah.
you know, and she did a lot of good work, but there's just been too much, like, you know, I don't know how she's super different from Bill Clinton or George W. Bush or whatever. These people who, of course, are like towering people historically, but are just from, you know, even though it wasn't that long ago that she was, you know, the Secretary of State. Like it just feel the world is so different now.
Two things.
Uh,
Two things you said I really liked. One is that it would be comical if it wasn't so deadly, deadly serious, and I feel like that should be on a Trump 2028 bumper sticker because that has been a phrase that's been coined for a decade now. And the other thing you asked is, Hillary have any power in the current Democratic Party? That's a good question. I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I sure don't see her out, you know, trotted out as a figurehead or a cultural touchstone. On the other hand, it begs the question: does anybody have any power in the Democratic Party these days? Anyone? Who's running this clown show? So, two things
no, but
I liked.
I mean, I guess, you know, if you're having a DNC or whatever and you bring out Barack Obama or even like, you know, like Elizabeth Warren, who's like currently, you know, a person doing something, that means something. I feel like Clinton, she not only is, I mean, I hate it's so difficult to talk about Hillary Clinton because there's been a lot of like unfair criticism of her and there's been a lot of fair criticism of her.
There's a lot of
Um,
water under that bridge. Absolutely.
yeah, and so, but I feel like there's just the um the world in which she was impacting it's just changed so much in the past not even that much time, you know, like whatever 8 years since she was Secretary of State or 10 years. Um so um but yeah, I mean same with like, you know, like I said, like George W. Bush. He was the president now, but now I feel like his opinions meh. Um so or um I don't know, anybody who was a big mover and shaker just like a handful of years ago. Um,
I, I gotta say, I think that those sort of folks do have a certain gravitas, and so if you bring them into a room, people are going to listen to what they have to say. And if you invite them to be at an event, people are going to pay to go to that event because they want to be near that person. And the secretaries of state have always, from both sides of the political, or from any side of the political spectrum, uh, have their own club, if you will. I mean, they have their own sort of communication and their own way of talking to each other because they're dealing with a lot of, because they're dealing with similar situations or with different parts of the world where there's only so much information you can necessarily get. They talk to each other to trade information. And so a lot of these people, I mean, it was like Kissinger. Nobody liked Kissinger, but everybody listened to him. And if he walked into a room, you were, you knew that you were in the room with somebody who was in a putting things in a historical context. Now, that could be war criminal in his case, but he was definitely someone that if he showed up to something, it was noted, even when he was old, even when it was 20 years removed, even though he right, ended in total disgrace. And she did not. She was vilified by the Republicans enough to be to for them to use for marketing purposes. But as far as what she did for as Secretary of State, um, she produced, and even as senator in New York, I don't think it was absolutely stellar, but I do think that it was that she showed that she was someone who should be taken seriously, and I think she is, particularly in Democratic circles. Um, and you're also, I mean, I do think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that she's held in contempt for that have absolutely no basis in reality. And there's some things she did that were really, really crappy. And so she could, there's some stuff that you can literally, that would be legitimate to bring up as detracting from her uh, historical context.
I just feel like, yes, that's true, but I feel like if the Democrats like all of a sudden decided, who's our like maybe not our number one enemy, but who's like one of our big enemies we like can't wait to take down, Condoleezza Rice. I would be like, I don't care about her. And like obviously she participated in an administration that I had a lot of bad feelings about. But like I just um I haven't thought about her in a decade. Um and like obviously Hillary is a little bit more recent, but the fact that like I can't imagine it's hard for me to put myself in a Republican, let alone like MAGA shoes. But I feel like I would just be like, who cares if you take down Clinton? Like, her like, why are you spending so much energy when you could be trying to take down, I don't know, whomever.
I would say because they invested so much time and effort to vilify her over years. Condoleezza Rice, you're absolutely right. Nobody, it's nice that she's working at a college or whatever it is she's doing, but she wasn't also a former first lady, and she wasn't also a senator, and she wasn't also, there's a certain the whole healthcare debate under Bill Clinton's administration that she led. I mean, there's a lot of she has a lot of gravitas just from what she's gone through and what she had to go through. So it's a little different than a Condoleezza Rice, I think. But I mean, I get your point. There has to be a point where somebody has done their bit. They've been on the stage enough. They've been there. You see them. You know them. You got it. Okay, move on. So
I
yeah,
feel like this incident added to her gravitas a little bit. I'm a mixed. I have a mixed reaction to Hillary on the whole, much like you described. But the way she handled this, I would have thrown in some swears if it was me. They'd have had to beep this out for family television if it was me. And I was glad to see. One of my problems with Hillary is that she has that politician-y sort of fakeness. Sometimes you don't feel like you're getting either her real opinion or her real reaction and vibe, and it feels a little manufactured. She seemed genuinely pissed. She gave him one of these.
No, I will
Gave him one
say,
of these.
yeah, I will say, I mean, maybe this would be true of people on the right as well, but definitely watching that clip, I walk away feeling that my opinion of Hillary Clinton is better than it was before I watched the clip.
absolutely.
Yeah, she's
So I'm just
definitely a
like,
sympathetic figure. They were caught cheating in real time. This isn't something they found out the following Wednesday, and it was like, oh well, this was like hey, we're still in this meeting, and it's right here on the internet. What are you doing? To be caught so red-handed, just so pathetically in the moment, and for her to show a little, hey, we agreed on the same rules, it was very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for her. So, Tom, is there any one or two points you want to wrap up that last issue on, and then we will move forward?
Oh, and on the media?
Yeah.
Well, sure. 1 or 2 points, 925 of them. Yeah, and I've banged this drum a little bit in the past. I'm going to bang it again until I feel better. And so our longtime viewers may recall, but let me take you to a time gone by, a day that has receded into the distant horizon. But in the past, I assure you, in some golden, sweet, and nostalgic universe, the press confronted the powerful to get answers for the American people. The press asks a question, the administration gives an answer, and we all live with the consequences. If the government gives a shady, shaky, or false question, they'd be raked over the coals in the public eye, and their power and position are potentially threatened. Whole administrations have crumbled over this. In my day, it was difficult to get on TV. It's one reason being on television endows such an aura of celebrity, of competence. It's because, at least in the past, you couldn't even get on TV if you were an idiot or if you were a liar. If you're even a well-meaning simpleton, they would just screen you out. They had reputations to consider, and lying to your viewers is thought to be a tragic error. And if you did manage to get on air and swear or insult or demean the entire affair by shouting Baba Booey or Joey's mom sucks it, they would cut to commercial, you'd be blackballed, and you'd never be seen on a national platform again. If you were caught out telling a lie, same thing. This is no longer an effective dynamic. We live in a time when the president offers the dumbest, most confused, and ill-considered excuses for troubling motives and actions, and the press does nothing to refute it, except to wait their turn and to be the next person to be insulted. When this happens, they failed. It gives the disinformation and misinformation a national platform by not challenging it right there in the moment. By default, you give it the appearance of truth, an aura of legitimacy. You become part of the machine, a result directly at odds with your mission as a journalist. There used to be compartments on this type of thing, but those compartments have failed. We have raised up our highest politicians with the lowest moral character. But hey, they're presidents, Congress people / pillow salesmen, and the president's friends, so they're important, so we have to have them on. No matter how odious they are, they're in positions of power. It is journalistic collapse. You're supposed to care that people are lying to your viewers and listeners. It's a sacred trust, even if you've forgotten that. You're supposed to expose liars and make them suffer humiliation and outcast. It is chief among the duties of your job. It's a responsibility to the public. What you're not supposed to do is nod credulously and quietly fold your hands in your lap, all to preserve your precious seat at the table in the press corps, to preserve your next and ongoing opportunities to let them lie to your face again on Wednesday. I call on every member of the White House press corps to stand up to the liars and gaslighters in the White House. Argue, resist. Take exception when someone lies to you. They are, in effect, lying to your viewers. You're supposed to care about that. I mentioned this last week. The president is lying. The president's lying is something we've become so accustomed to, we don't even blink. When a president lies, it's because he fears the reaction the truth will bring. The president doesn't even try to lie convincingly anymore. This is doubly insulting. And I want journalists to care. The whole gig is fact-finding. When someone shits into the water supply of this country's available truths, I want you to object. I want you to take it personally. Here's a theoretical example. If your husband came home late one night and you wanted some answers, and he says, gee, honey, I had a flat tire and my phone went dead, that guy still loves you. He cares what you think. If he gets belligerent, makes eye contact and says, I went to the moon, bitch, so what? That point, he doesn't even care enough to lie to you properly. He doesn't give you a plausible lie. He just gives you some sloughed off crap he didn't even bother to think about and says, deal with that. Do whatever you want to do. I don't care. That person is not someone you're safe around. And that's how the president lies to us these days. He doesn't care that we might think he's lying. We all wink and nod and shrug and keep moving. He's gotten what he wants from us, and he doesn't give a hard poo what you think about it anymore. He's already got what he wants. To my press folks, what good is this access you're preserving? I know you can't report if you're not in the room, but if being in the room just means you get to eat the first bite of the shit sandwich while it's still fresh, I implore you to rethink your position on this. The system is failing, but there's something you can do. Resist, complain, argue, fight back. If he calls you piggy, call him a pedophile, call him a rapist, an imbecile, and repeat your demand for an answer to the question he just dodged by calling you ugly or telling you to smile more. Disagree. I'm begging you for the good of the country. The first reporter who stoutly challenges Dumpy Boy will instantly raise their profile. I remember and appreciate CNN's Jim Acosta for not bowing to that bullshit. I respect and admire the Associated Press for not calling it the goddamn Gulf of America. And they both got 86. They both got shit canned. They're out. They're not in the room anymore. Good for them. Neither of them has died as a consequence. Every single reporter should, when one of them falls this way, immediately demand an answer to the question that got them booted. This has multiple effects, all of them sorely needed. First, it shows the administration that their tactic won't work. If the next journalist simply continues the effort, it will have bought them nothing to eject someone. Second, it'll screen out and whittle down any reputable journalists in the White House press corps until all that's left is the Russian state TV and the My Pillow guy. The White House will dilute their credibility until no one believes anything they say. It'll soon weaken the White House's ability to lie itself. This is a good thing. Third, it will raise the profile of any journalist and any organization who pushes back. It will raise them up to martyr/hero status in a country that is desperately searching for heroes. I will personally subscribe to whatever print or podcast they represent that day. Our current system is weak and diseased and giving comfort to liars and bad Americans. I beg you, use your unique positions and access and command of the truth to disrupt this confused and deteriorated system and restore some pipeline of truth to the American people. Make good trouble. End rant.
Very nice. Excellent.
Had a lot of words in it anyway.
A lot of words. And we should extend an invitation to Acosta to come on the show and say hello. If he were to do that, that would really be excellent.
Wouldn't it?
And yeah, and we can think of a couple of questions to ask him as well. So excellent point. So there's on the media, and thank you to Tom for making it a good one. Our next issue is on bad authority, and I'm going to make this one very quick. I'm just going to make a mention of two things, and then we'll move on to our other segment for tonight. I wanted to make certain to mention that in Minnesota, they've launched an investigation that could bring charges against federal immigration officers. And what's important about this is that whole issue of accountability, extending it from where Tom would like to see it in the media, and we would all like to see it back in government where it belongs, especially for the federal authorities to be held accountable. And and if it's going to be the state that does it, the state of Minnesota, fantastic, more power to them. We'll have to see how the case goes and what happens with the investigation. Another issue of bad authority is happening in New York City, among others happening in New York City, I should say. But the one I'm particularly mentioning tonight is that the police department, through misconduct issues, will have to spend $117 million on settling cases this year. And since 2009, a total of $800 million has been spent by the city of New York due to police misconduct. An issue where money matters is a budget. And when you're talking about a budget that's so out of whack as the one that Eric Adams left behind, there's always an issue of something that costs a couple $100, maybe even a couple of $1,000 but over 100 million and upwards to 800 million, there's got to be a real issue there. There's got to be really something done. And New York, since the 70s, 80s, has had a rule that you have to have a balanced budget every year and you have to show it. You can't just say it. And how Eric Adams got around that to leave a gaping hole in the city budget is another issue, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, and something else that needs to be brought to the forefront. And somebody needs to be held accountable because accountability is a real thing. Speaking of a form of accountability, we're going to slide right into our next segment, which is more on this. And we'll have Hannah take it away.
Nice. All right, everybody. This is my first attempt at this, so if this is not how it's supposed to go, sorry. But anyway, I'm going to talk about Melania Trump. We talk a lot about Donald Trump here and in our personal lives, probably. But I just want to put that fresh off the release of her critically and audience panned Monsterpiece documentary, Melania Trump is taking a swing at chairing a UN Security Council meeting. She is the first, this is a historical moment. She is the first lady to chair a UN Security Council meeting. And not because she's exceptional, but because it's a terrible idea. Maybe if it was Hillary Clinton, of course, that would be fine. But, Melania Trump just doesn't, this is not what she does. So she's not a politician, and not in not even in the way that Trump was not a politician. And she's just very disconnected from this. And in her ability to be supremely tone deaf, her speech was on peace through education, just a couple days right after her husband helped bomb a school, an elementary school, which is the opposite of peace and education. It actually kind of reminds me of the effective altruism thing that's really popular right now, where people are like, oh, instead of spending money on, helping the world, we should spend money on AI because that could solve all of our problems someday, maybe. So we should just spend all of our money there instead of on food or infrastructure or what else we care about. This is the kind of step there. There will be no wars if we just go through systemically and just bomb every other country until it's gone, which is the plot of the Randy Newman song Political Science, which I feel is that song that you should listen to, where America bombs everybody so that there are no more wars. We should not do that, obviously. After this point, I kind of got over Melania Trump, so I put her name in an anagram generator. And these are the top anagrams I came up with. So first one, arm male Putin. Seems like something her husband would agree with until recently. AI plumber tan. Thought about making a picture of that with AI, but they were not very cool. A limp Truman. Solid. Very key to this time of the year, a Purim lament. An armpit mule, a mermaid tulip. It's a little bit nice. It's kind of nice. And probably the darkest anagram I found was pummel at Iran. So anyway, I don't know if anybody has thoughts on Melania Trump. Please feel free to share them, or her chairing of the UN Security Council.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to say it to the UN, but perhaps I'll just share it here. Yeah, I think this is a very almost bizarre thing. I don't know that her background has anything to do with her, about how we should think of her specifically. But the fact that who she married and how she's handled the whole thing of being first lady, I think is legitimate, something to talk about. And the whole "I don't care" jacket, and the whole sort of the whole thing with the Christmas. I'm not a Christmas person, so I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna talk about the issues of the holiday, but the whole decorating the White House with the black trees and the whole thing, it seems really sort of a statement that I don't understand. Let me put it that way.
There was a reference made to Melania Trump's fitness for the role tied to her background. If Melania's background had anything to do with her duties today, those duties would be swabbing off herself at a truck stop restroom with a wet wipe. That's what her experience entitles her to do.
Well, and I think like if there was some historical piece about this, some precedent, it might not necessarily be bad. Hey, let's bring in. I still don't love the like sort of nepotism part of like the relative of each country's chief executive, the president or prime minister or whatever. But I do like the idea of just like taking people who are not normally given some sort of political voice, and if they talk about the UN, sure. If there's precedent, sure. But she's only there because she's Trump's wife, not just because she's the president's wife. It's because she's Trump's wife. um, and so it just like I feel like, yeah, I guess as I said in my intro, like it's only historically significant because it's a historically bad idea.
Yeah, do not get me started on President Pierce's wife. Just does not go well.
If before we wrap up more on this, I'd like to tell you something that I think is really stupid, as well as relevant to our first two segments. It's war and on bad authority. I'm reading just now. Bipartisan resolution aimed at limiting President Donald Trump's ability to wage war in Iran has failed in the U.S. Senate as the strikes continue. The war powers measure was rejected in a 53-47 vote, largely along party lines. It would have halted U.S. military action in Iran without congressional approval. So apparently, we had the chance to do something about this, and we whiffed it. I don't know what's happening in this country.
Well, it's also the particular people who did. I mean, so all of the Republicans voted against it. All of the Democrats voted for it, and then a group of 5 Republicans joined the Democrats, which was not enough because they would have needed another 6 or 7 Republicans to join them, which of course they weren't going to get. But it's also the collection of them. It's like Murkowski from Alaska and Collins from Maine and Rand Paul from Kentucky and Josh Hawley from Missouri voting with the Democrats.
I'm guessing those
And
5 are not up for re-election in the next cycle.
yeah, it actually would be interesting to find out. I mean, either that or they knew that they weren't going to have to worry about, in other words, they knew beforehand which Republican their colleagues were going to vote against it, and they knew that they wouldn't reach the 60-person threshold that they needed to pass it. So it was a free vote, Collins could go ahead and do it without there being a repercussion later. So she voted with the Democrats, that kind of thing. But Holly and a guy from Indiana, and so there are just some weird twists to it. And that will, we'll have to find out later what happened. But, you're right, Tom. Here's the thing. How in the world do you give away your legislative power? You do it by this. This is the way you do it. You've handed over the war power to Trump specifically.
They've been doing it since he got in. That one big beautiful bill was the only thing they passed, and everything else they've tariffs, all these things, that's Congress's domain. If they lifted a finger to stop that, to slow it down, to gum it up in the courts, they would win, and they won't. These institutions, this Constitution we have, they don't mean anything if they're peopled by weak, corrupt human beings, and they are. The weak, corrupt human beings are in charge of our system, and things that directly are refuted in black letter law, small words. People like me can understand it, and we're not heeding it. We're not treating it with any reverence or respect. It's lawless and it's obvious. It's not complicated. It's just people not doing their jobs, and I don't know how to change that. I mean, I know how to change it, but I don't know. I don't know how.
Well, we
we're
all know
gonna
how to change it, and it has to happen. Is all that really matters.
What's
I
that now?
just
We know what we have to do to change it. It just has to actually happen, and it
I guess
hasn't
so.
yet.
the
So our
last
next chance is coming up next the end of the year.
the last time the United States declared war on a country was 1942. That was the last time we officially declared war. All of any military action we've had since then has been skirting the system. That's almost 100 years that we've been skirting the system in a country that's 250 years old almost.
And it's just another way Congress has given away its power.
Yeah. And I mean, also, we've done a lot of like bad wars in that time.
I mean, but think
And
of all the good ones.
I don't have to think very long about it. And it's just like apart from the fact that like we intentionally don't have a king, what's nice about this is it allows
You're telling
for
yourself that.
people, yeah, in theory, it allows for the idea that if we're going to war, the decision has to be made by a lot of people. And hopefully, in theory, there should be space for some of those people to sit up and be like, "Hey, this is a terrible idea." It's the same idea of like why the Supreme Court has like lifetime appointments, that they wouldn't be swayed by whatever. But like the system only works if the people don't voluntarily give up their power.
Right. And with as you pointed out in the initial discussions of all this in the Congressional Continental Congress, the issue of war powers were: do we give it to the president? Well, no, that'd be too much like a king, and we don't want one person doing it. Well, so we'll give it to the Senate, and they objected to that. They said, "Oh, 100 people. That well, it wasn't 100 people at the time, but a score of people. That's too few, too few." So it has to be the whole Congress, or else it's not being given. Enough people are not giving it a consideration. So that's an excellent point.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Tom, for bringing that up.
Let's also take a quick look at our next issue, Anthropic AI. And to be perfectly honest, I'll ask what folks think about the issue, and we're going to do the 3 points. I think we should do what we have to say maybe a little bit on the quick side and jump on to the next issue. But can someone go ahead and let us know?
Well, the Pentagon apparently wanted Anthropic AI, their current vendor, to allow them to cross a couple of ethical red lines they have. One was that we don't do mass surveillance, and another is we don't do killings without a human somewhere in the chain to make the final decision. The Pentagon apparently pushed for Anthropic AI to disregard those guidelines and push forward with autonomous killings left up to the machine entirely, and mass domestic surveillance. Anthropic bucked and balked at that, I should say, and the Pentagon threatened to try to basically ruin them business-wise, declaring them unsafe to work with and going with someone else. Anthropic, to their credit, did not knuckle under and refused to do what the Pentagon asked. And so they went to OpenAI, owners of ChatGPT. As I understand it, they declare that they also have not acquiesced to those unethical requests, at least. And then there's some fuzzy language that, well, not on our servers and not on our side of the fence somehow. But then why would the Pentagon go with you if you're not going to do the thing that they fired the last guy for not doing? So it doesn't stack up. Anyway, so our Pentagon apparently has insisted upon and gotten their way and so we can look out for RoboCop-like killings and mass surveillance. So close your windows and drapes, everybody.
Anna,
That's my
anything
that's
on
my
the
sense of it.
potential death
There's
from
been a lot of
AI?
the thing about how a lot of these AI models work is um they're basically right. They're just like sophisticated guessing machines. They're guessing what they're supposed to do correctly based on the data that's been fed into them. Which means that by definition, any bias that exists within the culture, within their designers, within their, whatever, is built
Friend, whatever.
into their system. And so I feel like, as you have Pete Hegseth going around saying that, maybe women shouldn't be allowed in battle and maybe people need to be more like manly or whatever, to believe that those people are going to be free of bias and they're not going to put that bias into those machines um, that's foolhardy. And they're just going to continue to move along and do whatever. And especially when paired with mass surveillance, it would take a couple lines of code to put in a drone and say, hey, grab anybody who you identify as being this whatever, racial minority, ethnic minority, gender minority, queer minority, religious belief, whatever, and just go through and attack all of them. you know it takes nothing, and it's actually kind of designed to make that easy. And so the idea that um it automatically carries biases, and anything that we've done, any um anything we've done badly is just going to be turbocharged by this. It's basically going to be any mistake we've ever made as a culture on steroids. um it's going to be a little more um you know people, I think that it's neutral because it's just a computer and it's unfeeling, but all of its data has been fed in by humans for the most part, and so it's going to act the way that the average human, whatever that means, or at least the average person that's in the training data set, acts.
I think even that is kind of a ways off. I think the big problem with AI so far is that it's shown that do, it can't get to that point. It's not, people think of it as HAL from 2001 or, something from a movie where it actually is sentient or approaching being sentient. And that also, I think, is talking to your point, Hannah, because it's only it can only act within the parameters that is given. But even then, it's full of, you know, it's not capable of going to the being able to make real decisions and being able to make good decisions. When it was one of the examples I enjoy is from the primary in 2025, where one of the candidates decided to use AI to write part of their platform. And it was so goofy that when it came out, they were just considered a laughing stock. It was like you let AI write your policy, and not only that, but look at what it actually did. Look at what it says. You didn't even proofread. I mean, you didn't even look at it apparently once it was put out. Man, that's just goofy. And Andrew Cuomo didn't recover from that. That's his housing policy from the primary, and he was just made a laughing stock out of it because he tried to just palm it off on AI. So I think people also don't understand what it is and what it doesn't do yet, much less trust it to target humans and send in the missiles and whatnot.
Look what we've got now with humans at the trigger. We're blowing people out of the water off the coast of God knows where. No, not even trying. Not even trying to have a logical, uh, sense of rules and any sort of fairness. We're just atomizing people, and that's with humans still in the chain, in the decision chain. Can you imagine AI? I've seen AI screw up just like everybody else has. We can't give the AI guns just yet. Holy cats! And yet we
Well,
are. We are.
yeah, and I mean, even if it did work the way they claim, it's pure id, right? Like the reason you have generals doing this is not only that they're humans, but they have experience. What you don't want is a YouTube comment section deciding who we bomb, because there's just rage there. And you see that there's been these studies where like 80% of whatever AI is run through like war games choose nuclear bombs or whatever, and it's like, why would you put that in charge of anything?
Like there's
Uh,
a seminal scene in the movie RoboCop, and we keep referring to movies, and I know it's just art and something people made up in their heads. But there's a scene early on in RoboCop, and I think they made a great point. They're in a corporate boardroom. Everybody's standing around, and they're having an exhibit of one of the early RoboCop models, and it's that squat tank looking one. And they say, Johnson, grab that gun and point it at me, and the robot comes alive. Doot, doot. Please put down the weapon. You have 5 seconds to comply. And the guy goes, yeah, it works good. And he sets down the gun. Please put down the weapon. You have 3 seconds to comply. The guy's already put down the gun. You don't put down the weapon. They cut him in half with a rail gun from this robot because a simple glitch that AI is absolutely known for these days. They'll cut you in half, which is pretty prophetic for a movie from the 80s. Not bad.
Let's move on to our final issue for
on
tonight,
that cheery note,
which of course is a favorite of everyone. This is the Trump dump, where we get to say a couple of things. What's going on with
just to just to
betting?
clarify, the bridging sentence was on the subject of cutting people in half with a machine gun.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. Killer
Your lips to
segue.
God's ears.
Allegedly.
Right.
Allegedly, yes, exactly. Allegedly. Um, so an issue and a general concern that is just as serious is the idea that this guy's trying to go around and he lost an election and after that, tried to take it back and started an insurrection and got some people killed over it. And then tried to slander a bunch of more people and start a bunch of lawsuits, all of which he lost. And even his own lawyers would not, in court, would not even use the terms that he was using as far as there being election fraud because they knew it wouldn't stand up to any sort of rigorous test of truth. So this time he's going a slightly different way. It looks like he's working very hard to figure out how to steal the election beforehand instead of waiting for the actual election to happen and then complain about it after. We all know about the incident in Georgia where his people went in and took ballot boxes out of a building, out of the Board of Elections in a certain county, a Democratic county in Georgia. And we've heard of a number of other issues that he has started to uh, uh, kickstart around the country, where he's dealing with getting the election set up correctly or postponing it or whatever it is that whatever excuse he's going to use next. Um, Anything on stealing elections beforehand?
I'm against it.
Okay, well that's one.
Hot take.
Oh, I mean, I'm also against it.
Yeah, I don't.
You're a
Outside
little
of his,
slow on that one. We're going to keep an eye on you.
It's not until Matt said that's one that I just wanted to make sure to clarify that I was also on that side.
perfect, as it should be, as it should. Yeah, I mean, outside of him and his little circle of sycophants, I don't know that there's many people who think that's a good idea or would ever think that that would be something we should do. But they're also talking about declaring martial law in order to try to cut the elections off. So it's a serious threat. They mean it. It's not something they're just saying to offer up to as red meat to their supporters. They are genuinely interested in wanting to figure out what to do so that they can cut it off because they clearly see that things are not going their way and that an election means a loss of their power and maybe even some of them having to end up in court or in jail and maybe paying the price for 34 felonies of some sort or another. Even one or two felonies, honestly, could be enough to wind them up in front of a judge and possibly even in jail. So there's some serious considerations, and we'll see what happens next on it. But it's serious. We should take it serious as well. Another thing that might be taken seriously could be that there have been pictures of Trump from one side where he seems to have some sort of a rash or some sort of an ailment on his neck. And certainly seems like something that should be taken care of. I don't know what sort of medication do you think you should use?
Sulfuric acid.
It could cut through the problem, sure.
I
Chloroform.
think about a year ago he pissed off a bunch of people in around New Orleans area, and I think finally those curses are finally taking their toll, finally settling in.
Well, yeah, first there was that thing on the back of his hand, that big bruise
Yeah,
that they tried to palm off by saying, I shouldn't say that, they tried to come up with an excuse about how
palm off.
he
Get it?
yeah,
It's always
I
working, ladies and gentlemen. Got a million of
I
them.
took it back immediately. Um, but yeah, there was this. They tried to say that it was because he was shaking hands, but I swear to God, I've never shaken someone's hand by the back of the hand. Is that a thing? Is that a new like secret handshake?
That's how he shakes hands with the help. He just gives you one across the teeth.
I thought it might
It's
be
like an
something.
autograph.
Gotcha.
I
I
was
thought
gonna
it was.
say all those people who have to kiss the ring.
Right, right. If they're kissing anything, the bruise would be on his ass.
I mean, I don't want to see pictures. Maybe it's there.
Well, then don't look too close at the Epstein files.
There you go. I was thinking it was a secret handshake for the island. What I'll also mention real quick before we wrap up here is what's happened down in Texas. They had their primaries down there, and oh, hey, look, there's some results. There were a lot of elections, and we talked about a half dozen of them. But I did want to mention two or three real quick, and that is this particular race. You see the numbers for up there on the screen right now. That's the race for senator. Now the incumbent is a Republican, John Cronin, and he's got competition from a guy named Ken Paxton, who's the Secretary of State down there in Texas. He's best known for the divorce that he got from his wife and some of the revelations of some of the things he was doing that helped bring about the divorce. And so John Cronin is facing this guy and does not. They certainly there's no love lost. The interesting thing is that in the election, somebody had to get over 50% if they wanted to take the election the night of the primary. If you don't get over 50%, there has to be a runoff. So these two ran against each other. Neither got 50%. So that means in May, sometime in late May, I believe it might be May 23rd. Oh, May 26th. I apologize. So May 26th, there'll be another run for these two guys and a couple of other elections where the 50% threshold was not met. So the Republicans will pick their nominee in late May. The Democrats don't have that issue. As you see at the bottom of this graphic, the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate was picked last in the election, in the primary. And Tallarico, who you might have heard of from the non-interview with Stephen Colbert or the shuffled off to internet land interview with Stephen Colbert. Uh, that was he took the Democratic nomination, and with fairly good numbers. I mean, he as you see there, 100 and what is it, 1.2. Yeah, and the runner-up, Representative Crockett, who was a member of the House until this run, she only got 1.0. But the point is, he got over 50%. The thing I'm pointing out as well is if you look at the number of votes, the Democrats wound up getting, what was that, 2.2 million, and the Republicans altogether didn't even quite reach 2 million. So for Texas, that's an interesting little detail that the Republicans didn't even get to the usually have way more. And of course, a general election is always different dynamic than a primary, yada yada. You look back at the other general Senate races, and it's like 10 million people. 5.5, and the other candidate gets 5 million. But it is interesting that the Democrats did so much better in their primary than the Republicans did in theirs. Although the Republicans did get pretty nasty. Apparently, um, Paxton was saying that Cronin had turned his back on Texas and that he had called the border wall naive. He's saying that to discredit Cronin. He's saying Cronin said that the border wall was naive. That he pushed amnesty while we were being invaded. That Cronin was doing that, and also that Cronin was stabbing Trump in the back, attempting to undermine his campaign and supporting Democrats' lawfare against Trump. Which honestly, I don't even know what that means, but I know that he didn't do it. It doesn't even matter what it means. He didn't do it. He wasn't helping Democrats do anything. So I don't know what that is supposed to reference, but Paxton is that kind of guy. So technically, and Cronin said about Paxton, he said he refuses to have a flawed, self-centered, shameless Paxton risking the Republican brand that's been built both in Texas and the nation. So it's getting nasty. We'll see we'll see how nasty it gets. Trump has not endorsed either of the candidates before the primary, but says that now that the primary's over, he's gonna get out there and he's gonna endorse someone before the runoff, and that he expects whoever he doesn't endorse to immediately drop out of the race. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. It seems a little much to ask. Yeah. So real quick, I did want to mention two congressional races, which I had mentioned in the previous election central. Dan Crenshaw, you might know the fellow with the eye patch from Texas, who is hardcore right wing. Well, he lost, and he lost big time. The guy running against him got over 50%, so Crenshaw is done. And apparently, in part, it was due because it said that because Trump didn't like him, and the biggest county that is in that congressional district is a huge Trump-supporting county, Montgomery County in Texas. And so, Dan, pack your bags. You're out of here, buddy. And in the 23rd congressional district, the Gonzalez case, you may remember we talked about this guy Gonzalez who had an affair with a staffer, and that she was so distraught over it that she committed suicide. That Gonzalez denied the whole thing, and that the lady's wife, the lady's husband, released text messages between the two of them, showing that Gonzalez was trying to pressure her to continue, requesting anal sex and other things that she was distraught over. Uh, well, he kept his opponent under 50%. So that means there'll be a runoff in that race as well on the 26th. Texas apparently wants to show where its values are and who it trusts and wants to have as an elected official. And apparently, Gonzalez is still in the race for that. So there's what Texas thinks. There are one or two others, but I'm going to skip those in order for us to wrap up tonight. We won't stay all night long, but we do appreciate your joining us. And of course, we do want to check in on the Epstein count up. Wouldn't want to miss that out. This is the day since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released. And we are at day 3,914 and counting up. Thanks for joining us for PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. If you want political laughs, you can join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod. From the top,
I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
and I'm Matt Nisanoff saying goodbye.